If you're still guessing how much money you'll make next week, you're probably not forecasting. You're just hoping. Hey there, Restaurant Pro. This is Dave Scott Peters, restaurant expert, coach, and creator of the Restaurant Prosperity Formula. Today, we're diving into the art of sales forecasting, a critical skill that transforms guesswork into strategy. Let's explore how a simple, consistent forecasting process can empower you to make informed decisions and drive your restaurant's success. It starts with historical data. We can't overlook the past because it helps us predict the future. Review your sales from the same period in a previous year to identify patterns if you're seasonal. If you are somebody who's got just little blips in seasonality, we're going to look at last month because that history gives us an idea of what we're going to do for the month we're forecasting for. How about start to adjust your forecast based on external factors? What do I mean? Consider events, holidays, maybe even weather and how that impacts your sales. This is important. I always tell my members that they should be not only having a manager log, but they should have a sales log. It should document not only what your sales are, but more importantly, what was the weather like? I'm here in Phoenix, Arizona. We've got these great big storms called dust storms, haboobs. They come in walls of dust. And in Arizona, I tell you what, if it sprinkles, people don't go out. When I was a restaurant manager, we saw a little rain, we knew our sales were going to hurt. Well, it's important when I know last year there was a major storm and maybe we even lost power. And that's why my sales were so low for 1 or 2 days in that month. Well, it's important because when I'm forecasting for the going forward, I'm not necessarily going to know how to predict if I'm going to have rain. So I'm going to want to adjust those sales up. It's important that I know that in my sales journal that we had the state fair in town last year on these dates. So when I come to that month again, I'm forecasting for, I should be looking up when the state fair is because I know it's going to take for my business. Vice versa, it'd be good to know that I had a huge party that they blocked off half our restaurant and the sales were incredible. I don't have that this year. So making sure you consider the events that happened in the past are going to help you forecast for the future. I talk about maybe it's time to start breaking down the day and even by the shift. What do I mean? You've got to analyze sales data for each day and shift to identify peak times. So we start by the day. We've got our DSR tracker that tells us what our gross sales are by day of the week. Right? It's the information you get from your POS system. You type it into that spreadsheet, whether you call it a DSR tracker like I do on my program or your daily sales spreadsheet. The fact of the matter is you have the data and you can see your busy days versus your slow days. This allows you to, well, not only forecast for your purchasing, we'll talk about in a second, but more importantly, put the right people on the right shifts because you know when you're going to be busy. Now later, when you really want to dive into your forecasting, you can go one step further and take those days and look at those peak periods so we know when we should stagger start people so we can save on labor. That's a topic for another day. How about using a rolling average? What do I mean by this? Calculate a rolling average based on your sales over the past few weeks. This is going to help you smooth out your anomalies. Right? Are sales going up? Are sales going down? Can I see those trends? This is why normally if you don't have high seasonality, I want to use last month's, the last 4 weeks for all intents and purposes, sales, because I can see the trends. Maybe, again, on a minor level, if you will, or micro level, I may look at events. I decided to add karaoke to my restaurant on a Thursday to make it busier, and it's working. Well, it's important to know that I'm seeing a spike in sales, and more importantly on that day, which translates to other systems. How about, we've talked about labor. How do we integrate these sales forecasts with labor and inventory planning? Well, align your forecasts with your staffing schedules and inventory orders to optimize efficiencies. I teach 2 systems, proactive systems based on this information, based on our sales, based on our budget targets, that allow us to give up ordering without giving up our checkbook, called the Restaurant Checkbook Guardian. This allows your managers, by looking at your sales forecast, looking at your DSR tracker, looking at what your budget target is for food costs, bottled beer, draft, wine, liquor, as well as what you've purchased. Up to a certain point, it tells your managers how much money they could spend on their next order. So sales forecasting allows you to make sure you order enough food proactively. Because if I order too much food, It can be spoiled, wasted, stolen. I lose money. If I order too little food, I can 86 items, piss off guests, lose opportunity, lose money. Now, the same can be true for labor. I teach a system called the Restaurant Payroll Guardian that tells our managers based on our budget, our sales forecast, and last week, what actually happened, how many dollars you have to spend by position, but more importantly, number of hours. This allows us to say, use the hours allocated next week based on the sales expected instead of bringing people in and praying we're busy. Instead, we use the hours that are allocated. That means I may have to stagger start. I don't bring everybody in at 4 o'clock to play grab ass at the time clock. Instead, I bring in 2 to set up the restaurant, 1 at 4:30, 2 at 5, 1 at 5:30, and I cover my business. I don't waste the hours. Because if we go back to the old way of running a restaurant, bring them in, send them home if we're slow. If you've got 10 employees working and you didn't get a rush and everybody's worked for 3 hours, it's too late. You've blown your budget. So aligning our forecast with our ordering and our scheduling becomes critical. Now let's talk turkey. What do I mean? Sure, I'm giving you tips on how you should do this, but I'm going to tell you ways we can shortcut it. One of the things in my group, I've got a spreadsheet called a sales forecast generator for a 12-month sales forecasting or 13-period sales forecasting. I do one at a time. In our budget, we do our 12 or our 13 periods, what our forecast is. But then each month, we see what we did last month, and we make sure our forecast, what we think we're going to do in a month, seems about right. And then we plug in our DSR from either last month or last year, same month, and what our forecast is. And it, bang, automatically increases or decreases your average Monday through Sunday. This gives me a good snapshot of what I need for the week because I don't really care how accurate I am by the day. I care more about the week because all the systems I teach help us make sure that we go into the week on budget. It also allows me, when it comes to whether I've ordered enough product and the scheduling side of things, it allows me to understand that when I use that allotment system, the Restaurant Payroll Guardian, if I have 350 hours in the kitchen, I know I need to schedule for production, not labor cost. That I will produce a different labor cost by day of the week. I might run a 28% labor cost on a Monday because I had my ass handed to me over the weekend. We are crushed in sales and I've got to do all this prep on my slowest sales day of the week. So production hours are needed. I don't have the sales to support it. But when I get to Friday, I'm going to run a 16% labor cost because we're asses to elbows. We're on a 2-hour wait. My customers are managing my efficiency. As long as I use those 350 hours in the week and my sales hit my forecast, I'll be on budget. Now, that's a spreadsheet format. Well, now we've got tools out there. We've got things like 5out.io, which is an incredibly powerful tool, probably at the top of their game unless you're seasonal. So you can pay for an app, and this one's incredible because it not only will give you your sales forecast, but it's also going to take the data from your POS system and tell you what your prep needs to be. And it's got more. Or we go one step below and we start to look at things like 7Shifts, who over the last few years have really polished their forecasting. Now, it's not going to change your world and go as in depth, but it's pretty darn good. Even if you're seasonal, they've dialed it in. Now we've got software, things like Margin Edge, which is food and beverage software that is jumping into the sales forecasting game. No matter what system you use, you must be forecasting. You must have a system, a process, a way to guessing, if you will, a best guess what your sales are going to be so you can proactively manage your business. Forecasting isn't about predicting the future with absolute certainty. It's about preparing for it with informed insights. By implementing these straightforward steps, whether it's on your own or with software, you'll gain control over your operations, reduce waste, and enhance profitability. Be sure to join me live every Friday at 8 a.m. Pacific time on YouTube, travel schedule permitting, where I'll get you pumped about the upcoming weekend, get you excited about crushing your goals and finding the motivation to be best you possible. Plus, I'll answer your burning questions live.